Right, well, fundamentally, this is our last teaching session of our day, and we'll go to around 4 p.m. Those of you who have got planes to catch and buses to catch and other things to catch, we'll have a pause at 4 p.m. and that'll be basically the end of our presentations. Some people yesterday indicated they'd like to hear about things like arrangements for new
venues overseas and for our trips.
For our trips, and also finances of revolving around trip and whatever. And those of you who wish to hear about all that, you can remain, and we'll probably do that until about 5 or 5:30, and then we'll have to pack up. Does that make sense? So those of you, we're hopeful that we will finish our presentation proper at 4, and then have a bit of a break where we can go to the toilet and other things like that, and then we'll come back and have that other discussion based on what we're thinking of doing for next year and the year after. That's our general plan. Let me have a cough. All right, so we thought you can see from our discussion so far, though, that when we started our conversation with you on Friday, I wrote our topic. I'll just get those. Pray for God's love. The interesting part of that theme is, for most of you, prayer is a dirty word. It has a lot of religious and other negative connotations, doesn't it? And when you hear the word pray, the average person sort of has a bit of a knee-jerk negative reaction to the word. For many of you, God is a dirty word. In other words, whenever we mention the word God, all most of you feel is a sort of a feelings of negative feelings towards God, like a negative feelings in the sense of, that we've just gone through in the last session. Negative feelings about God's character, God's nature, negative feelings about how God designed us, and all of those kinds of things. Can you see in those two things, if we can emotionally solve these two sets of attitudes, can you see that it's likely you would give prayer a go? But until you do emotionally solve the problems we have with those two things, prayer is going to be a difficult thing to do. And the books we gave you, the pageant messages that we gave you on Friday, they're going to be encouraging you to pray constantly. And so can you automatically see that reading them is going to be difficult unless those two things are addressed? The word prayer and how you feel about prayer, and also God and how you feel about God. Those two subject matters need to be addressed. Now, I would recommend to you to address them as fast as you can. To work your way through these issues as a priority. Like, put some effort to deal with those two things. Your attitude towards prayer. Remember what prayer was? Sincere longing. So the attitude towards prayer and understanding what it is really, really important if we're going to have any ability to change our condition of love. We need to receive God's love, but in order for that to occur, prayer must occur. And in order for prayer to occur, I need to understand what a sincere longing is, and also I need to not have a negative attitude towards the word prayer itself. Right? And then on top of that, my concept of God is going to have to be adjusted. I'm going to have to stop holding on to the concepts that I still believe in my feelings, still believe are true about God. I'm going to have to change that somehow. Now, can you see that's not going to be necessarily an easy thing? Because there's so many emotions that we have about God and the word God and what we've been taught about God and what we've blamed God for and all of those kind of things. There's so many emotions attached to that it's going to require that I deal with a number of those emotions in order for me to have a sincere desire to receive something from God. So my concept of God needs to be addressed. But then we come to the third part of the theme, which is the word love. Can you see that what you believe love is going to have a large bearing on what you think you want from God when you're asking for God's love? Can you see that? And unfortunately for most of us, what love is people meeting your desires, people agreeing with you, people making you feel approved of and accepted, people making you feel like you're important and special. These are the kind of things we feel somebody who loves us does. And it's interesting because that's not the way God loves us. And so the third thing that's going to have to be addressed is my perception about what love is. Now, of course, the fastest way to change that perception is for God to share her love with you so you know what love feels like. But unfortunately, many of us are seeking a different kind of love. So when we long to God for love, we're not longing to God for God's love to be given to us. We're often longing for our own concept of love to be validated. Can you see the difference between those two states? One is that you are going to be open and accepting of whatever God wants to give you. Because remember we drew the diagram how we've got God, God's soul, and the human soul. Yep, a bit distorted that one, so I'll just straighten him up. Whoop, bit distorted that one too, so straighten him up. Right, human soul. And God has defined how love is transmitted from God to humans. And there are laws that control or govern whether that love can flow. They are actually scientific laws. They are laws just like the law of gravity, but pertaining to the operation of the human soul as it has its relationship with God. So there are laws that govern how love flows and when love can flow. And those laws are all governed by love itself, God's version of it. God's concept of love is the thing that governs the laws that control how the love can flow between your soul and God's. So God designed your soul to receive it, but only under the conditions where the law is obeyed. Now, if you are longing for a type of love that God doesn't wish to give, then the law is broken. So now you will not be able to receive God's love, because God's love only flows when the law is upheld. So if you have the feeling that love would do things like rub out your problems, cause you to not have to deal with your problems, cause there to be a magical solution, cause there to be no need for you to take personal responsibility.
Make allowances.
Make allowances for your sin. If you believe this is what love does, then you're not longing anymore for God's type of love. You're longing for addiction from God. And God won't respond. The law can't respond to your addictions. Does everyone grasp that? Have you any questions about that? No? You want to leave your hand up?
So because you say we don't know what love is, but we want to pray for God's love, and God is the only one that can show us
What love is?
Yes, like, I'm a bit like, whoa,
What?
where do we start?
Well, you need to have this sort of feeling of openness towards whatever it is you're going to receive.
So you don't have to have established God's definition of love inside of your heart to receive God's love, but you do have to seek God's definition of love and be willing to give up your own definition.
Yeah.
That's the crucial element.
But see, when most of us are encouraged to pray for God's love, we already have a concept of what that love is in our own mind and in our own feelings. We have a concept of what love would give us. And so that concept is often what we're asking for. And remember, the asking is the feeling. So if you have a feeling you want God to meet your addictions, you want God to make you feel good about yourself, you want God to not tell you the truth about yourself, you want God to make out everything's fine when it's not, and you want these things, which is what most people view love to be, then you're not longing for God's love. So we've addressed, over the course of the last 3 days, we've addressed praying, what that means and how it feels. We've addressed this issue of God, like, how do I feel about God? Do I really want anything from God? What's my beliefs about God? How I'm imposing my false beliefs upon God, and how much of a blasphemy really of God that is. But we've not yet addressed this issue of what is my concept of love? What do I think I'm going to get? You know, what is it going to feel like when I get it? What do I think it's going to feel like when I get it? Right? And bearing in mind that most of us believe somebody meeting an addiction is love, can you see straight away, if that's the kind of love we're seeking, we can have a sincere and we can have a longing and we can have it towards God, and yet still the prayer not be heard, because we're expecting something different than what God will give us, and we want only something different than what God's prepared to give us. Do you follow?
We've got conditions on the prayer, if you like.
Yeah. We've got conditions on the love.
So it's a lot about finding out our own definition of love and deconstructing that.
Not just
Looking at
deconstructing it, but even being, in your belief systems, being prepared to change it. You see, most of us aren't prepared to change our definition of love. You see this a lot in relationships. Like, you know, when we talk to couples, frequently we don't have any personal meetings with people, but in a public setting, often there's small groups that we're talking to, and frequently a couple will say, you know, oh, what can we work on or whatever. And frequently when we talk to a couple, you've got one party, say it's Mary, and she's got her definition of love, and you've got another party, me, and I've got my own definition of love, and I'm asking Mary for love, to love me, but I'm asking for my version of it. So for many men, their version of it is, Mary, you've got to agree with me all the time.
Make me feel like I'm a big guy.
Make me feel like I'm attractive. Make me feel like I don't have to do any work for you. Make me feel like, oh, well, I think you should nurse me a bit too. Oh yeah, and also you should always want to have sex with me and never not. And also, on top of that, you need to cook and clean for me too. That's my version of love, somebody looking after my physical needs. And when I come home from work and I'm really tired, you should be looking after my meal and you should be tidying up after me. And you know, when I leave my socks around the place and I leave my undies everywhere and I don't wash my clothes, well, you should do all that for me. That's what my mummy did, and she loved me. So that's my version. And also, unfortunately, it may be Mary's. So she may even be prepared to do all of those things because she thinks that's what it means to love me, right? And then she will have her own version. So her version usually is going to probably relate to her parents and her father and everything.
Make me feel safe, do all the heavy lifting literally, and probably in decision making, and you know, just reassure me that I'm
and
a
if there's
good
anything
woman.
to do with a car, and there's anything to do with a bike, and there's anything to do with a house, and there's anything to do
Machinery
with
of
a
any
machine,
kind. Yeah.
you fix that. No, it's not up to me. That kind of thing. And then when I do all of that, she feels loved. Right? So now both of us are thinking this is what love is. I've got a concept of my own that I believe love to be. Mary's got a concept, sometimes in agreement with me, about what love would do, but sometimes also demanding of me about what I should do. Right?
Which you might agree with as well. Or
Which I might agree with. So if I've been brought up in a sort of very, what would you call it, nuclear household, I think they refer to it as, where, you know, the man does a whole heap of things and this is traditional, this is what he should do, and the woman should do these things, you know, the man goes out and gets the money. So if Mary's going out getting the money and I'm home looking after the kids, I no longer feel like I'm a man anymore, right? Because I've grown up in an environment that teaches me, no, the man does that. He goes out and does that, right? So I'm no longer seeing things the way Mary does anymore, right? So now, even though I'm thinking I'm loving and I want love from Mary, and she's thinking she's loving and she wants love from me, we're actually in complete disharmony about what love actually is. And then in other areas, we are completely in agreement about what love is. Even if, from God's perspective, both versions are wrong. So this is our problem. We have a concept of love inside of ourselves. So when somebody says to me, I long for God's love, I'm thinking I'm longing. What am I thinking? Oh, yes. When I long for Mary's love, I'm longing that she looks after me, cleans my clothes after me, I don't have to take responsibility for much, and things like that. It makes me feel like I'm a great guy even when I hardly do anything at all. That's what I think love is. So what am I longing for from God? I'm longing for God to agree with all that. To give me the same feeling. With me having those very poor attitudes, I'm still longing that God gives me love and agrees with those attitudes.
Yeah. And now if we go back to that example where we're the couple and we've got all our definitions of love are wrong, some of them agree, some disagree, and go to your question, do we have to deconstruct each one of those things? We could. It would take a really long time. If we just made one change, both of us, which is we are open to a definition of love which isn't ours at the moment. That's all we'd need to do to receive a new definition. Yeah.
It's hard to emotionally do that.
You have to emotionally
when you're
do some
attached to it
work.
emotionally.
But you don't have to intellectually go analyse, this is what I do, and I can see logically, that's not very equitable. That's the natural love path, doing all of that work.
Yeah.
But the divine love path, as we call it, is being humble enough to feel any pain you have in relation to your definition of love and being willing to let that go in favour of God's definition.
Yeah.
If that is in your prayer, then you can even have a false definition of love. but God will be able to show you where it's false.
I don't understand yet how I can do that emotionally.
It's tough because you're going to want to impose your emotions. And frequently our definitions are attached to our worth.
Yeah.
And this is where it gets really tough, because you start thinking, but I want this from God, and I think that that's love, and you're not prepared to be humble enough to accept God's definition of love, and instead you want to hold on to your own. And there is a big problem with that when it comes to prayer, because God's going to share with you her version of love, and for many of you, you're not even going to recognise it as love. In fact, some of you will recognise it immediately as pain. And what I mean by that is many of you feel very pained when somebody says a truth about yourself with you. But God views that as love. So when God shares a truth that you don't want to hear with you, and you don't want to hear it, you're going to think, that's not love. That's not somebody loving me. That's somebody trying to cause me pain, trying to pull me down, trying to make me feel bad about myself. That's not love. And then when somebody else comes along like a spirit and they go, don't worry about that. That's not really true. I'll make you feel nice, and they make you feel nice. You go, there's love, there's God. When it's actually a spirit or an evil, it can even be an evil spirit sharing that feeling with you. Right? And this is how spirits get involved in your relationship with God. By your having a definition of one of these three things, God, prayer, or love, you have a definition that's false that you want to uphold, and they will help you uphold it if you want to uphold it. God wants to give you the truth about it. But other spirits who want codependent addictions with you they're not going to want to give you the truth about it. So there's many people we meet who say to us they've got a relationship with God, but all we feel is often a very dark spirit who they are calling God, that they have a relationship with, and they have it through their addictions.
So a prayer could be, let me be open for a different version of love.
Spot on.
Yeah.
Yeah. And not only let me be, but I realise I must be. Because all of my versions of love are going to be tainted by my upbringing and my life and my experiences. So it's highly likely that my version of love is going to be flawed.
And, we're pretty stubborn about our definitions of love. And we don't often analyse the level of pain that our current definitions of love are creating every day. And I think if you engage with you pray for God's love with the knowledge that, my concept of prayer, God, and love is going to be altered in this process. And if I can look at my life and say, there's probably problems with those three definitions already because I've got quite a lot of dysfunction and things aren't going that well.
Remember the list of problems you made? Every one of those is because of your concept of love being flawed.
Yeah. I think then it's a process. And it's a process, if you're aware enough to say those three things are probably going to be altered in this process and I'm up for that. And for me, to get up for that, I had to really have a lot of pain in my life and really eventually get humble enough to go, maybe that's not everybody else's fault. Maybe that's because I've got some bad definitions inside of me. But then as soon as you hit that place, you can start to engage with that prayer experiment in a much more humble manner, and things start to be adjusted.
Okay.
Thank you.
Now, Olga, you're just going to have to move over to a seat because that where you're sitting is not in this shot. Sorry for that.
Is it also when you start praying a lot that also the spirit attack increases? Like the more you connect?
It depends whether your prayer is sincere or not. If your prayer is sincere, the most likely thing to happen is it will decrease.
Yeah.
So if spirit attack increases when you pray, then it means that your prayer is not sincere. Yep.
So is it that the kind of like peace comes to you when you're connected to God?
Yep.
Yeah.
Always. Yeah. And when you say peace, don't interpret peace to be no emotion.
No, but it's like a calm feeling.
Well, don't interpret calmness to be the same as peace.
Can we say it's like more relaxed?
Well, no, you may have intense emotion.
Yes.
You may cry. Like, you remember Anton, he wanted to cry. The reason why he wanted to leave at one point was because he just wanted to go away and have a good cry. Right? The contrast between the love he was getting from God and the love that he'd experienced all of his life was so great that it just caused him to remember all of the times he was not loved. And so he just wanted to cry about it. He just wanted to leave and cry. So you'll feel something, and then you'll realise, that also creates a lot of contrast with the things that weren't good, that were out of harmony with love, And in the process of that, you might have to cry, to just get over it, to feel something different.
I think what you're referring to is more like a single mind, single focus. Like there's not a busyness about
exactly.
it. So it's not calm as we might normally define it, but it's when you've had a lot of spirit attack, suddenly that's clear and you're consumed by your experience.
Yeah.
Yes.
Not by somebody else's.
Yeah.
So don't assume that just because you're now in an emotion that it wasn't God. But you've got to be very careful assuming that just because you feel so nice now, that was God. Because most of the time when you first pray, the contrast between God's love and somebody else's love is so great that all you feel is grief about the other loves. It's so called loves, And that's all you feel for a while. So for many people who start the process in the hells, which is where most people on earth are, any person who starts the process there, generally, one of the first emotions you experience a lot of is when you start praying and receiving God's love is grief. Right? That's usually the case. Because there's so much contrast between the type of love that God has for us and the types of love, so-called, not true love, but loves that we've thought were loves, the kind of loves that other people have or had for us. Right back.
So when I am, I would say, sort of attempting to pray, but I'm not actually praying because I don't have all of that. Does God he's still aware that that's happening?
Yes.
And my spirit friends know that's happening?
Yes.
And my desire is probably having some effect. So
well,
I'm saying...
it depends whether it's sincere.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I would just like to know when I'm trying and I know that it's not like working.
Yeah.
It's still having.
Well, be careful of this. This is a thing to be careful of. Many of you have believed in your past that trying is good enough. And as long as a person tries, they should get the effect they want, even if the trying isn't that hard or the trying isn't that sincere. As long as you put in an effort of some kind, you should get what you want.
Sorry to interrupt. I think my question comes from a problem with disappointment.
Yes.
And feeling like often on the path to trying to build a desire,
yes.
I experience disappointments, and then it can be very hard to keep.
Yeah, but remember Anton yesterday. He tried for a whole month praying, had no effect, and he was disappointed. Right? But he didn't think maybe it's because initially he thought it just doesn't work, rather than thinking he was doing it wrong. There was something wrong with his either desire, the sincerity, or the longing, or his view of God, or himself. Now, in his case, it was his self in relationship to God, this view that he had that was preventing him from sincerely longing. Right? One of the things I must say to you, and this is something Mary and I talked a bit about this morning before we came. This is something that many of you feel love doesn't do. It's going to be really simple. Many of you believe love never says what? No. Many of you believe that. This is not true. It's a huge fallacy that you've been taught in this life, that whenever somebody loves you, they will give you whatever you ask for. Not true. There's many things you ask for that are completely out of harmony with love, and if you got them, would destroy your life. Right? So it's good you don't get them. God saying no to you is just as powerful as God saying yes to you. Because when he's saying no to you, he's saying, no, that's not love. No, what you're wanting, there's something wrong with it. So many people want to hear, when we talk about prayer, many people want to hear like, as long as I try hard, isn't that good enough? As long as I try a bit more, doesn't God recognise that and just give me some reward for that? And the answer is no.
Yeah. Or
God doesn't.
this, I didn't know any better and I tried my hardest. Therefore I should get some compensation, or at least, some positive result from that.
Yeah.
If not avoid any negative consequence.
Yeah. But there is this underlying sort of feeling in that God would never say no if God loves me. When you begin asking for God's love, God says no more often than yes. And the reason why that is because we have problems with these things so much that we've got to sort some of that out before we can hope to receive God's love.
And it's very important, this, and I see this happening on earth now, the way children are raised. There's praise, unconditional praise. And actually what that does is it distances the child from reality. Some things aren't good. When you do the maths wrong, it's wrong. And when we just give heap unconditional praise or say, oh, well, you tried your best, it's still wrong. And if that child wants to build a bridge one day, they have to get it right. Otherwise, we'll all fall into the river and die, like the bridge we went over this morning. Yeah. And this is what God is really the same as what God is trying to show us reality. No, Patricia, in reality, it's not sincere yet. In reality, that's not love what you want. In reality... And
he recognises that you're trying, but he also recognises you haven't got it right yet. Yeah. And you need to know you haven't. Yeah. And you need to sort that out.
And if you are open to that, similar to what we said to Nelly, if you are open to getting it wrong, you won't be as disappointed. If you are disappointed, you feel your disappointment. But also in that case, yes, sometimes your spirit friends can come along and say, you've got to look over here, sister, But you've got to be careful of what Jesus is saying, which is, I'll just do what I reckon and not be open to any correction, and I should get a result.
Yeah, it's amazing that this is such an educational process.
Yes.
It is.
Educational.
Very.
Yes, God has you in this educational process, and as long as you engage with a humble attitude, you're going to learn so much, even when it's no, still not it, still not it, still not it, still not it, still not it.
A month later, still not it. 2 months later, still not it. 5 months later, still not it. You're getting real frustrated and angry, and there you go again, there's your demands. Still not it. That kind of thing. And a lot of people sort of feel that God should respond based on effort rather than sincerity. And that's not true. This is one of the things we wanted to discuss with you about prayer, that most people think about prayer. There is a very strong concept in every Christian faith, and in also every Muslim type of faith as well, and that the more you do something regularly, it proves you're holy, and it also should work.
It shows you're sincere.
It shows you're sincere. So for a Muslim, 5 times a day, right? You bow, you ask God, you pray to God, and you say a rote thing, and that proves that you were sincere. That proves that you're sincere. To God, it doesn't. It doesn't prove anything. It's a pointless exercise, actually.
It's on this physical level.
Yeah, where we're living at the moment, there's a church bell that rings every quarter of an hour. All
24 hours.
24 hours a day. And, many Christian faiths created these church bells to remind you to pray. Now, if you prayed every quarter of an hour, 24 hours a day, God would not answer most of those prayers at all. Because it would be a demonstration of your own misunderstanding of what prayer is. Right? So, why they ring the damn church bell 24 hours a day is anybody's guess, but it's got nothing to do with God, a relationship with God, or a proof of a relationship with God. Nothing at all. But most of us believe, put in the effort, you should get the result. Put in the effort, try hard, get a result. And this does not work with God. What works with God is you obey the law, and then you get a result. The law in this case, remember I said, the law is God, the soul of God, has laws that govern the flow of love between God's soul and the human soul. Right? The human. There's laws. The laws control whether the love flows or not. You in harmony with the law means the love will flow. You out of harmony with the law means the love won't flow. It's exactly the same as the law of gravity. The law of gravity has a certain effect. If you try to do things out of harmony with it, like get on top of this building, jump off, you're going to hurt yourself badly, right? Because the law is operational and you just ignored it. You just ran away from it. Whether you were ignorant or you weren't, or you were thrown off, or you jumped off, or whatever else might have happened, you tried to fly and didn't engage that law properly, you're going to get the result. The same goes here. The answer when the law is broken is consistent. There's a good reason for that consistency. Without consistency, you wouldn't know what to do. Right? So the reason why God is responding consistently when we ask and we don't receive is because we're breaking the law in one way or the other, and we need to find out how we're breaking it. Right? Very important. So you'll read one Paget message where Paget went to a Christian church and the minister of the Christian church was saying, even if they're not getting any responses from God, well, God's still listening and God's still responding, and it's just that they don't know, right? And the message, I think I wrote it, but the message said, even though the minister thought he was doing a good thing to encourage his followers to pray to God, he actually was damaging their relationship with God, because when God does not answer, there's a reason. Makes sense? And he was basically saying there wasn't a reason. Right? So he's teaching the people he's teaching them that they don't have to abide by the law in order to receive. Right? And this is a fundamental flaw in many teachings on earth, where people believe just the effort is good enough. And it's not. Accuracy is required. Right? And this is what Mary's pointing out. If you applied the education to building a bridge, you've got to be damn accurate. Otherwise the bridge is going to fall down and lots of people are going to be harmed.
And you get the good result. And once you know the mathematical equation, it's not hard anymore either. And so this is another key principle of prayer. It doesn't have to be hard. It just has to be the right method. And when you're learning anything, there's you're figuring it out. You are learning. It's not going to be necessarily easy initially, but if you're just like thrashing yourself and if I just put more effort, with no attention to getting the right method, then there can't be a result. You'll exhaust yourself. You'll get angry, hopeless.
Or if you believe that God's going to just reward the effort without the effort being sincere, or longing, real longing, or that you've got all these false beliefs about love that you're projecting at God, He should give you that, then of course you're breaking the law, and God can't give you the very thing you think you're wanting, And the only way he can tell you is by saying, no, I'm not giving it. Does that make sense? So, in the first century, I used to say to people bringing up their children, let your yes mean yes, and your no mean no. The reason why I said that is that's exactly what God does to you. He lets his yes mean yes, so when he agrees, you'll feel his agreement. When he also lets his no be no. In other words, you're going to feel his no. You're going to feel the absence of the yes. And we need to come to terms with that. As people, we need to come to terms with that. When it comes to a relationship, most of the time we're expecting our partner who loves us to say yes. But actually, many times they should be saying no. So, for example, if I'm coming home, throwing my clothes on the floor and expecting Mary to pick them up and put them in the washing machine and wash them, right? I'm out of line. I'm out of harmony with love. Mary should be saying, no, I'm not doing that. She could even throw them at me and say, you're doing that. And I wouldn't be offended. Does that make sense? Because I'm demanding something that's wrong. I should be said no to under those circumstances. If I come home and I expect the meal to be made for me because I worked all day, right? She's been looking after kids all day and she's been home all day, let's say we've got children. And so I think she should also cook me a meal, that's a part of her role. Well, her saying, no, you're not getting a meal tonight, is good for me. Because it educates me that my demand is wrong. It's out of harmony with love. Makes sense? So you've got to learn, when you love people, you've got to learn when to say no to them too. I've actually said no to many of you already. Many of you have come up and asked for some personal feedback, and I've said no every single time. It's not love. So the answer is no.
Thank you very much.
Make sense? So we've got to learn how to say no as well as yes. So what you need to say no to is anything that's not loving. You've got to learn how to say no, even to yourself, actually. Right? So, when you want that, you want that chocolate, or you want that coffee, or you want whatever it is that is an addiction, Some of you it's drugs, some of you it's marijuana, some of you it's like worse drugs than that. Some of you it's like spirit interactions, and some of you it's like I want some sexual interactions with women or with men, and you want these things. You've got to learn how to, it's an act of love of self to say no to the things that are bad for you to yourself. So to not allow yourself to do them. Now, when you receive God's love, it's easier to do that. Because then you can measure the love and you can feel what love is, and you get to a point even when you receive God's love that the reason why you want these things dissipates, and then you don't even feel like you want them anymore. So after that, you don't even think of asking for it. But while you have addictions, you are going to be wanting things that you believe it's loving for other people to give you, and the best thing to do to you under those circumstances is for somebody to say no to you. Just like God would. Make sense? Yeah. So don't be offended with God for saying no. And don't think that if I just try harder that I'm going to get a different answer to no.
Actually, it's great to know that I finally have a parent, who's being a good parent.
Yes.
Yeah.
Consistent parent.
Consistent and teaching.
Yeah. Now, God doesn't punish you along with the no. Many of your parents have done that where they've said, no, and because you asked for that, I'm going to hurt you in some way. Smack you even, or whatever. God doesn't do that. He just says no.
Thank you very much.
Right? And we need to come to terms with what that no means. For many of us, a person saying yes meant they liked us. And a person saying no meant they didn't like us. And so when God says no, we then presume that God doesn't like us. Not true. He's saying no because it's the best thing he could say in the circumstance. He loves you enough to not give you the things that if he gave you them under the circumstance, your life would be hurt or ruined. So he loves you enough to say no. And by the way, if you're a good parent, you'll love your children enough at times to say no to them too, rather than yes. Yeah. There is this very strong presumption on earth that yes will always be the answer of the person who loves. Many of you act out that with me. You think that because I'm saying I'm Jesus, I should say yes to you all the time. And when I say no to you, you're shocked. Lose, what? Like, if he's Jesus, he would have helped me out there. If he was Jesus, he would have answered my question there. If he was Jesus, he wouldn't have just said no and gone on his way. And what I'm trying to do is demonstrate to you the same thing God would, and that is there are times when you need to be said no to because you're in an addiction, and you need to be said no to, by someone at least in your life. Right? And I'm prepared for that someone to be me, even if it's only me. God's prepared to be that someone with you too, even if it's only God saying no. No, everybody else around you says yes, and God's saying no. He's prepared to do that because he knows this is to the long-term advantage of his child. To know when a yes means yes and a no means no. You're not having that. Not from me anyway. Does that make sense? He knows that there are many people who are prepared to give you the things you want even when it's wrong to do so. But he's not going to be one of them.
Now do you go to Johnny and
All straight across.
Andrew?
I guess I have a question about how to make sure that you are talking to God and not to spirit, because I guess I'm a little bit afraid that 15 years down the line I will have thought that I was talking to God, and then turns out I wasn't.
Well, firstly, I must say, when you're talking at all, you're talking to whoever is hearing you. So an example of that is, if I'm talking in this environment, 100 or so of you are here, so you're all hearing me, maybe. Whether you let it in or not, it doesn't matter, but you're all hearing me. If I'm sitting alone, thinking I'm alone, talking to God, I'm not only just talking to God, I'm also automatically, anybody spiritually who is around me is hearing me. They're all hearing me, right? Now, of course, if I'm saying it silently, there are some spirits that can't hear that because I'm not developed to hear that. And then there are other spirits who can hear that because they've developed enough to hear that, right? It's not about who you're talking to that's the problem.
I think I should specify receive love. That's what
It's about who you're listening to.
Yeah. And who you're receiving things from.
Do you understand the difference? It's not who you talk to that's going to cause you trouble. It's going to be who you listen to that's going to cause you trouble. Right? So, when you do pray, who are you listening to? Who are you receiving things from, is the question. Now that is going to be dependent upon your sincerity, your truthfulness with yourself in particular, but also with everybody around you. The people who are attracted to your insincerity, your lies, are the same people who are going to harm you. And the people who are attracted to your sincerity, your truth, are the people who are going to help you. So, if I'm in a personal state of insincerity when I'm praying, the people who are going to answer my prayers are not going to be God, and it's also not going to be any spirit associated with God. It's going to be a spirit who does not care about my sincerity.
And what if you think that you're sincere?
Well, that's a state of self-delusion. And there's not much I can do about somebody's self-delusion. The only person that can change a self-delusion is the person themselves. You see, it gets down to what you want to believe, doesn't it? Fundamentally. If you want to believe good things are good when they're bad, well, naturally you're in a state of self-delusion. You're deluding yourself. You're denying the truth. Any person who wishes to deny the truth is going to attract spirits who help them deny the truth. That's an automatic process that occurs through the law of attraction. The only way you're going to attract God or any of God's children who love truth is for you to love truth. That's the only way. And this is where it gets quite difficult for many people who pray, because many people start praying but they still love the lie. They still love the illusion. And obviously the answer from God is no under those circumstances, because it's not in harmony or in agreement with God's law. But the answer from spirits who love delusion is going to be yes. And there is little I can do for you to determine that.
Can you see that what's required of each person is to cultivate this desire for truth about self, about God, about about the universe, about who they're speaking with, who they're attracted to, and that's something very personal that only you can do.
An example is, there are some people on earth who feel that God is with them all day, every day, telling them what to do. You know, they say, you ask them why they did that, and they say, oh, God told me. And then they ask them, why did you do this other thing? Oh, God told me to do that too. And did you not question it? No, because God told me. And you say, how do you know it's God? Well, God told me it was God. So God told them that I'm God and I'm telling you what to do and you should do what I do, what I'm saying. Now, based on the laws that I've taught you, does that sound like something God would do? Because what is it doing? It's in disharmony with free will, right? God wants you to do what you want to do, not what he wants to do, right? So any spirit who's doing that is a spirit who is evil, actually, telling you what to do, right? Now, they can tell you all sorts of things. Like we know people who are guided by spirits who tell them to go on the stock market and put their stock on this, and sure enough, it grows really well and they get lots of rewards for that. And in fact, some people have become multi-millionaires from spirits telling them what to put their stock into, right? And then other spirits come along and tell them, oh, they tee up relationships. Some of the people in this audience have had some relationships teed up by spirits. They say, there's the guy, he's your soulmate, go for him. And sure enough, you go along because of some sexual addiction or emotional addiction, go along. And sure enough, down the track, you find out what didn't work out so well, but you just thought you were obeying God or obeying the inclinations of a God that's telling you what to do. God does none of those things. Not a single one of them. So that's an example of us wanting a result and being prepared to listen to a spirit claiming that they're going to lead you into something that's good. And yet, in the end, you end up in quite a dark place. So the man that I know who has made millions off of the stock market from spirits telling him what to do, he's in a very, very dark place. Not much you can do to help him because he wants that, right? He's heard divine truth. I've even told him directly that that's what's happening. He's more interested in the money than he is in following the principle, right? There's little a person can do to help a person who wants that. Right?
So maybe a good way to verify whether you are actually receiving God's love and not from the Spirit is that you feel yourself changing, becoming softer, and the definition of love is changing internally.
Improving, yes. So your honour of free will should be improving. Your honour and respect of others should be improving. Your love for others should be improving. You become less selfish, not more selfish. There's a lot of ways to measure whether you're a more loving person or not, right? A lot of ways. And if the inclination from the spirit you think is God is telling you to do things and it's causing you to respond to what he's telling you, then you know straight away something's up there. Because God would not do such things. All God does is provide advice, when we want it. So I can ask God, is it good to do that or bad to do that? And God can say, well, it's bad actually. God can just give you that answer straight away. But God won't tell me what to do about it. God won't tell me that I should do that or should do that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, that's up to me. That's my will. God will say, what do you think you should do? Knowing what you know about love and knowing what you know about will and knowing what you know about feelings and so forth. What do you think you should do?
So a bit like you are doing with us as well.
Yeah.
That's right. That's why I'm not the cult leader that people claim, because I won't tell you what to do. I'm just saying to you, here's what's right, here's what's wrong, here's God's truth, here's not. What are you going to do? Well, it's up to you. It doesn't even concern me if you decide to neglect all of what I've said and do the opposite. There's many hundreds of thousands of people who've listened in this life to me who have done exactly that, and I'm not offended. I don't have this sort of feeling that everybody should listen to me, right? And in fact, anybody who does have that feeling with you would be out of harmony with love, because you don't have to listen to anybody, even God. God doesn't even have the feeling you should listen to God. Right? But God does have the feeling it would be wonderful if you did, because you'd have a happier life. Right? And that's the feeling I have. It would be wonderful if you could listen, because you have a happier life. Yeah. Not just happier life now either. A happier life after you pass, in the spirit world, happier life everywhere, not just now. So God is inclined to give you gifts and wants you to experience happiness, but if you choose opposite, God's not going to be offended. He's not going to punish you for that, for your bad choices. The bad choices alone, the results of them will be enough. Does that make sense? Like, God's not like some punishing parent that goes, you made the bad choice, so no matter what the result of your bad choice was, which will probably be bad, I'm going to make it worse. God doesn't do that. God doesn't try to make things worse in your life just because you made a bad decision. Right? God's always trying to make your life better, but he also knows that sometimes you need to feel the consequences of your bad choice in order to change your choice. Yeah.
Thank you.
We're up to
John,
John,
did you
please.
still?
Yeah.
How does a no from God feel? Is it like simply that you don't receive anything?
Yes, if you don't receive anything, the answer was no.
It's not like a
It's not like God's going, I'm not sure whether I'm going to respond to Johnny or not today. You know what I mean? It's like yes or no. The truth is that if you do things in harmony with the law, and this applies to anything you do with God, in harmony with the law, you will always get a result. Always. God never does not answer something. He always answers something. The problem is, for most of us, we're getting no a lot, and we're interpreting that as no answer. But God wants to answer you. The answer is either yes or no. And if you had a feeling from God when the answer was no, you'd think that's yes. So God's got to give you no feelings in order to give you a no.
And also, it's not the kind of no on earth. Often no, as Jesus was saying earlier, is accompanied by a projection of you should be ashamed, or you're lesser than, or you're a bad boy now, because it's a no. It's just when you're praying and there's no response, it is no response, meaning no. Of course, there's the conscience, though, which can give you very clear yes and no feelings that are more internal.
Yeah.
So
you can ask God for love, and the answer is nothing. You get nothing. But you can then ask God for some truth, and all of a sudden you get some inspiration. Bang. That's why when I asked, there was nothing. Now I got an answer as to why there was nothing. Does that make sense? But I've got to want to know that. That's the operation of the conscience. And God's interested in giving you truths, yes or no answers, but he also wants to give you love, which is a feeling. But he can't indicate a no with the love. He's just got to indicate the absence of it. Make sense, John?
Yeah.
So you can ask God direct questions with your conscience, like what is right, what is wrong kind of questions, and you will get direct answers from God about that, yes or no, yes or no. But when it comes to love and you ask God for love and you don't get any, that's a no.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Does everyone understand? Really, like, what I love about it is this. It's so simple. It's like, I'm not getting anything from God. The answer was no. Isn't that wonderful? It's like when you ask your parents something, what happened? They go, oh, maybe, or maybe later today, or maybe later, or oh yeah, I'll do that, but they don't, and then or oh no, I'm not going to do that, but later they have a change of heart and then they do. Or it's very confusing, isn't it? In the end, and what you learn with your parents is all I've got to do is ask more persistently, and I'll get a different answer.
Ask a different parent. Negotiate.
Yeah, negotiate. If I ask more persistently, I'll get a different answer. So many of you have been trying the same approach with prayer. You've been thinking, if I just be more persistent and I just try harder and I just make, God knows that I'm being sick, I should get a different answer than no. But that's not going to happen. If the answer is no once, there's going to be no every single time in that same state.
Unless I adjust.
Unless you make an adjustment, then there's a change, and then the answer might be yes based on the adjustment you've made. Right? But if the answer is no once, it's going to be no 1,000 times. So what's the point of trying the same thing 1,000 times if the answer the first time is no? If the answer the first time is no, then look at why there would be a no. I know it sounds simple, but what I've learned is that in this life in particular, in the first century not so much, but in this life I learned, well, most of my prayer, the answer was no, for a long time. And it took me time to come to terms with the fact that God was just saying no to me on a lot of issues. And then once I started looking at why, I could see why the answer would be no there, And now when I look back and I go, I'm so grateful that the answer was no most of the time. Because if the answer was anything other than that, I would have gone down a completely different track. And it would have been disastrous for me. Right?
Yeah, and even for me, it's if I had have had a response, it would have reinforced all of these falsehoods that I had about what was reasonable, what was loving, what I was entitled to, all these things that actually needed correction because I was creating a lot of pain and suffering in my life. And if God had have responded to me in my pleadings or my negotiations around those issues, I wouldn't have changed. I wouldn't have realised, eventually, a lot of us on earth in our sin, we're blaming externally all the time. Oh God, see my problem, it's because these people have really hurt me, or it's really hard for me right now, or this is how is this even reasonable? You think this is reasonable? This is not reasonable. You should see it's not reasonable. Or why are people expecting this of me? And a lot of it is all externalized. If God responded in those times, it'd be validation. Oh yeah, you're right, it is somebody else's problem. When God doesn't respond, you come to a point where you realise, that was good that God didn't respond there, because actually I wasn't humble yet. I wasn't willing to look at me. I was demanding other people change rather than look at my own character.
So let's just for a moment look at decisions that you face when it comes to God. So when it comes to asking God questions. So a thing called a decision tree, or you've heard of that? Yeah. So if you ask a question of any kind, what are the general possibilities on earth for the answer? The possibility is yes, it's true, isn't it? Another one is no, it's not true. Right? But there are many other possibilities offered on earth as well, aren't there? What are they? Maybe.
Yes.
Sometimes. Yeah.
Later, yeah.
Sometimes.
I don't know.
Later. Yeah, later. Or further conditions and so forth, right? Can you see, for many of us, this is why we've become so confused about our decisions and our requests. Because there's so much of a variety of different responses that humans give to a question. And if you look at it fundamentally you could say, I suppose, there's yes, no, and maybe, right? But there's no maybe with God. But for me there is. Like, you ask me a question, if I can give you a yes, I'll give you a yes. If I can give you a no, I'll give you a no. But if there's nuances to it, I'll give you the nuances to it. But in the end, it'll be a yes or a no. But when it comes to things I don't know anything about, well, I don't know. Maybe yes, maybe no, I don't know. I'm a limited human, right? I don't know everything. So I can't answer a yes or a no to something I don't know, right? So some people ask me, like, how long has God existed? I don't know. I'm assuming infinite, so therefore forever historically and forever in the future. But I've got no idea. It's impossible for me to know, right? Where does God live? I don't know. I can feel God, and God's tried to show me where God lives and everything, but I got no concept of it whatsoever. Like, he's tried to emotionally show me where he lives and everything, and I can't grasp it. Like, it's beyond any physical thing to grasp. It's outside of the universe. There's nothing tangible that is in my history that I could relate to. I don't know, is the answer. I've got no idea. And how many children are there of God's? Well, I don't know. I don't know because I don't know how many universes he has. He might have made 10 of these, or hundreds of them, or maybe even an infinite number. I don't know. Like, this universe is a constrained space in time and space, and he could have created, he's infinite, he could have created billions of them. I don't know. I don't know how many children he has. I can ask God, and I have. And it's like, mostly a lot of these answers come from God. It's just that way too many for you to understand how it's possible. And I go, okay. I just need more love from God to understand more. You know what I mean? That's the point of it. But on earth, we're going all these options. Yes, though, maybe, try harder, whatever. And so when it comes to asking for something on earth, we're thinking a no is not a no. We're thinking the no is maybe a maybe later, maybe a sometimes, maybe when my mum feels better, then it's a yes. Maybe when Dad's happy, or Dad had sex last night, let's ask him now. That kind of thing. Then it will be a yes. But he's feeling bad today and Mum's denied him sex for a whole week. Well, then it's a no. We don't know. We don't, and we're taught this as children. Unbeknownst to us, we don't even understand as a child why Mum and Dad are actually saying yes or no most of the time. And so we learn, all we've got to do is ask again the same way, at a different time. And there'll be a different result. And we're taught, and through this experience, we're taught that you just got to be persistent, and you just got to ask again, and you just got to do this, and you've got to do that, and you've got to make them feel good at the same time, and you've got to do this and that. And then, if I butter got up, I say, oh God, you're so wonderful. Aren't you such a powerful being? Like, you're so wonderful and special. Can I have something now, please? Do you know what I mean? That's the kind of way we emotionally think. We think we can butter him up. We think we can, make her feel good about herself, or make her feel better than she already does or something, and everything will change. And none of that's true. Right? None of that's true. The decision tree with God is fundamentally that with an addition. Do you know what I mean by that? Where we ask an original question, the answer is either yes or no. If the answer is no, we can ask the question, is there more to it? The answer to that question will be either yes or no. A lot of times I've found there's a lot more to what I'm asking. And a lot of times I'm just not asking the right question. And all I've got to do is learn how to ask the right question. it's very hard for somebody to share truth with you when you're asking the wrong question. Have you found that in the past? If you think about it from a mathematical point of view or an English point of view or a language point of view, there is a certain way of doing something, but often we're just not asking the right question. So this is what we find here in Portugal. I don't speak the language. So I'm looking for, there's very uncomfortable beds where we're staying. So I'd like to get a mattress topper. But what's it called in Portuguese?
Well, it's called a topper of a mattress.
It's called a topper, but they're only little thin things. I'm looking for this thick thing. There must be one of those here somewhere, but I don't know what it's called. I don't know the right question to ask. Right? Until I do, I'm not going to find the thing I want. And this is something that I've learned with God too, is that I need to learn to ask the right questions too. God wants me to think about it, to ponder, what is the right question? What am I looking for? What answers what am I trying to get answers to? Why am I trying to get those answers? Ponder. And once I ponder, I go, I understand the question I need to ask. This is exactly how I found God's love in the first place. In the first century. There was a time when I did not have it. And then I asked. But I didn't think to ask for many years. Till I was a teenager. I didn't ask. I received some younger when I had feelings for it. But it wasn't until I was a teenager that I worked out how to ask. And what to ask. Yeah? So it took me that long to sort that out. Good.
So I've heard you talk before about purifying desires. Is this effectively the process? Okay.
Yeah, it's really simple. What I love about God is God tells me when my desire is off. That, whenever there's a no, I know something's wrong. Either my sincerity is wrong or my longing is wrong. My desire is wrong. In other words, my desire is out of harmony with love. Right? So one of those two things have to be wrong if I don't get answers. Just one of those two things. So I know, okay, sincerity. Do I feel I'm sincere? I try to analyse am I sincere or am I trying to skip over something? Am I trying to avoid something?
Or it's like, when you think about first having an interest in God, there might be some curiosity, but there might also, so you might feel like, I desire that relationship, but also I don't want to be overwhelmed. So we need to purify that desire so that we're willing, if that relationship involves being overwhelmed, we're willing to let go of that fear of being overwhelmed. Now, okay, I might be willing to be overwhelmed, but just don't show me too much about
don't tell me too much truth.
How I'm sinning. Okay, that's got to go if I'm really going to have this connection. So this is the purification of the desire.
Yeah.
Okay.
And in each case, there's a yes or no, like from God. It's like, no, I'm not going any further than that. You've got to deal with something. And whenever the flow of love stops, got to deal with something here. It's wonderful. It's like, straight away, I've got to deal with something here. Something new I've got to deal with. And then it's a matter of discovering that thing. Now, one thing I must say about the discovery of things is that you're only going to discover based on how sincere your seeking is. So many of us have learned, just ask mum and dad for something, they'll give it to you. And there's no effort, no requirement of effort in many parents now. Like they just hand everything over to their children. Like the children love a sport, so what do? They run around every night after them, taking them to the sport. They buy all the equipment for the sport for them, and then next week the child makes a different decision and wants a different sport. So what they do is they put all of those things in moss balls, and then they go and get another, different garb for the sport, and a new racket for that sport, and a new ball for that sport, and whatever. And then they run around after them with that sport, and then the child says, I want something different. And all this does is teach the child that it doesn't have to do hardly anything but have a thought, and somebody else will meet the desire. That's not how God works. I've learned that God only meets sincere seeking desire. Right? So once I realise sincere seeking desire, then I go, okay, now I know something inside of me has to change in order for my desire to be passionate. In order for my desire to really want to do something.
Yeah, because sometimes, as an example, you get a no, what you think is a no, and then go, oh, I won't bother with that then, rather than that, well, there's just something out of harmony in my desire that I need to look at, rather than giving up and moving on to the next thing.
Correct.
So the seeking of truth in this process is it's really important.
Very important. Yeah. And love and truth, as we've always said, to hand in hand with each other. You can't have one without the other. So it's very important to understand how God works. You know, God's a very, very good parent. There's no manipulation of God. There's no, pleading with God. There's no, manipulating God's agenda through your own action. There's no, making out with, you can't make out to God. I'm trying hard, and get a result. Just like you could do all of those things with your parents. And you learn to do all of those things at school, with your parents, all the way through your own history, right?
Fake it till you make it.
Yeah, that's right. Fake things till you make it. That's in a way, a new age adage, isn't it? Fake it until you make it, and then you'll get there in the end, and all that kind of stuff. No, none of that actually works with God. Not a single thing. And isn't it good that it doesn't? Because if it did, how confusing would it be? God's not a confusing parent. God doesn't want to make your life more difficult than it needs to be, that it already is. What God wants to do is say, when you ask for something, the answer is going to be yes. If it's sincere, in harmony with God's love and in harmony with your passionate desire, the answer is always going to be yes. Right? He's going to want to give it to you. If he can, he'll do it. Right? When I say if he can, sometimes the things you ask for involve people, and he will try to influence those people to give them to you if he can. He will, right? But he's not going to influence them beyond their will, right? So he can only influence them if their will is in agreement with his, right? And he's not going to do anything more than that. But if he can do it, he will, right? There's many, many, many things you've already received, and you didn't even know that God actually gave them to you through his will, being exercised, encouraging others to give them to you. And this happens consistently from God all the time. But most of us don't see it like that. We see it like when somebody gives us some funds that we need, for example, we think, so thankful for that person who gave them the funds, rather than thinking, how much were they motivated by God to do that? And my pure desire to use those funds in a loving manner, how much was that motivated by God? Most of us have no idea. The same goes with everything we receive. The whole reason why you're even sitting in the chair you're in listening to divine truth is a lot about what God decided to give you and motivating us to do it for him. Right? Because my will's in agreement with his on the matter. Right? This happens all the time in your life, and most people have no concept, because we just have this very flawed concept of God, thinking he's so far off and not interested and doesn't care. It's just little old me. What would he want to do for me anyway? Rather than seeing how God sees yourself even. You are the pinnacle of his creation, and he loves you dearly, and he wants to bring you joy. That's how he feels about it. It's wonderful, eh? What's the time? Okay.
We will go down. We've got right after that then we have.
Yeah.
How does it feel to get an answer from God? And how do you know, or is it different from like your intuition?
Different from
your
intuition?
Yes.
Well, let's talk a bit about intuition firstly. Your intuition is not yours, for a start. It's spirits who are inclining you towards a certain thought and who are trying to help you go one way or the other. Now, if they are evil spirits, then your intuition is going to be to do an evil thing, and if they are good spirits, your intuition is going to be towards a good thing, right? So that is more to do with how spirits influence you. With God, it's very different. God's the most gentle of all influences, of all responses. And when I say the most gentle, it's gentle, but at the same time, very powerfully felt, usually by the individual. Initially, it's really interesting because the average person, when they first start praying, they sort of feel like, oh, I think I feel a little different. So once they have a few prayers and they're sincere prayers, they go, I think I feel a little bit different. I'm not sure whether I do or not. That's how small it feels at the beginning, right? And you'll have seen this if you read the Paget messages, and we would like to encourage you to read them. Like, not just read them once either, to read them over and over again, because it will help you greatly to understand these principles. But in the Paget messages, there's examples of spirits who started praying, and they said, I sort of feel different, but I don't know whether I've received God's love or not. I sort of feel like something's up, but I don't really know. And that's because you can receive just a tiny little bit of God's love to the point where you're sincere or have a longing is the degree in which you're going to receive it. So if your longing is not very strong and your sincerity is only just developed, then obviously it's just going to be a tiny little bit. And for some of you, you receive it and you go, oh, did I receive it? I can't. I don't know if I did. Right? It'll be like that. But what will happen if you keep praying is that eventually the feelings will get stronger and stronger. And in fact, in the Paget messages, the same person who said, oh, I can hardly feel it, a few months later he came to Paget and he said, I'm now overwhelmed by God's love. I cry, like he's emotional every time he receives it. So he started out with this just little, like hardly knowing the difference in his life. And then a couple of months later, he was just getting overwhelmed by it all the time. And he said he knows with a certainty what God's love is now. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah,
So don't think that what's going to happen is you're going to have to measure it over time. You understand what I mean by that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. A lot of times you don't know that something's happened until afterwards. Right? And this is particularly the case when you begin asking God for love, because when you begin, your desire isn't firmly established. You have many, many false beliefs. You have many false beliefs about love. You also have many false beliefs about what sincerity is. And so the moments you have sincerity, a lot of times it will just be a fleeting few seconds, if that sometimes, and you'll just receive it's like I think of it as one of those eyedropper things, as long as it's boom, dunk, on the soul. It's sort of like an eyedropper of water on the soul. And initially, many of you will barely notice something, if at all. But if you persist, eventually what will happen is you'll notice yourself, if you measure yourself now versus what you used to be, you will measure changes. And then also, as you get used to emotion, you get used to intensity of emotion, you get used to feeling, you get used to how sensitive you are to your own feelings. These things will grow to the point where every time you ask, you'll be overwhelmed by God's emotion. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but I also, if for example you ask God, like, should I go there?
Well, what did I say earlier?
Is God going to answer
Is
that?
God going to answer that prayer? God's going to say, do you want to go there?
Okay.
If you ask God, should I go there? Well, God can't answer that prayer. It's not in harmony with free will. You have free will. You're allowed to choose to do whatever you want.
Yeah, no, I get it.
Yeah. So he won't answer that prayer. But if you say, what loving options do I have? God's perfectly happy through the conscience to share with you as many of the loving options as you can cope with. Make sense? But if you say, which one of them do you want me to choose? God's not going to answer that question.
Can you ask, is it a good thing for me to go there?
Well, you can, but you can ask whether it's a good thing or not, a moral thing, you could say, a truthful thing or a good thing. You can certainly ask that. But if you keep asking it without any resolution in yourself of why it is moral or truthful, then you're not sincere.
No.
So God wants you to get to the stage where you know what's moral. You, in your heart, know what's truthful. When you receive God's love, you will know. But before then, you go, ask about this, ask about that, ask about this, ask about that. And God's going to say, well, now, how easy do you want everything?
And what you're
versus what are you going to learn?
Yeah, what you're going to attract in that state is a lot of spirits who are not interested in you developing your loving will, just interested in having experiences through you in your life. Yeah. So something that's very important about God is God has this education process about our free will. Remember, we talked about that a bit on Friday, I think. But we have immense potential in this free will. And every time we try to give it up by saying, oh, should I do this or should I do that? That's really saying, I don't want to learn about love. I don't want to learn about my free will.
I just want to be told what to do.
So God, on principle, would never answer such a question.
Makes sense?
Go against God's desire for you.
Yeah. God wants you to have such a strongly developed desire in love that you know exactly what the loving thing is to do and you want to do it. But it's inside of you.
And firstly, you know your desire. And then you want to know if it's loving or not. And then you want to refine the desire in harmony with love. And then you're willing to act on it.
But you need to be passionate enough to act upon it in order to act upon it.
Yes. It's not like, oh, should I maybe, or will I? No, God wants you to have passionate desires.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I really feel like I've got to do that, and I really feel like I want to, and I really know it's in harmony with love, and I'm going to do it. That kind of feeling. That's what God wants you to have, not, oh, maybe not. Oh, if it goes well, I'll do it. No, if it doesn't go that well, I think I'll give it up. No, God doesn't want to see that, because that's not a developed will. Yeah? He wants to see your passion, desire. Some of you have learnt passion and desire in your private lives with regard to work and other things, haven't you? You already had that in different areas. You just haven't asked yourself whether it's really loving or not yet. But you do know, some of you, how to have passionate desires and follow through with them and everything.
Persevere.
Yeah, and you're pretty strong on them. You make them happen. Some of you are like really strong on them, make them happen. So you've learnt the lesson of what it means to feel passionate about something, but maybe not what it feels to be loving about something yet. Does that make sense? And God's trying to educate you in all those areas so that you're passionate and loving and sincere. That's what God wants for you. Yeah. He knows that when you're passionate and loving and sincere, you will act, and every action you take will have a reward. Even if there's no perceived reward physically, there will be a reward spiritually. There's huge rewards for people who try to do things on earth even if they fail. So when you try to take a loving action on earth in harmony with your passion, in harmony with your desire, and in harmony with love, and let's say it all fails, like you could say I'm a failure, really, right? You could really. It's like in the first century I was there for teaching divine truth I started teaching when I was in my early 20s, actually. But when I started teaching, when I became one with God, I was 31, and I died when I was 33 and a half. I didn't live a very long life. And look what happened to Christianity afterwards. What a mess. You could say I'm a failure, really. Right? But God measures my intention. So I was rewarded based on what could have been created, not what was.
Well, that was also about the use of your will. You did everything, you developed your will so much in harmony with love that you were willing to do whatever was needed to reach the loving outcome.
Yeah.
And you weren't punished or negatively compensated for the will of others that prevented your loving will coming to fruition. So it's not like we were talking before with Patricia about this concept of, oh, just try really hard, but it's not really the development of a loving will. No, it's many principles in God's universe are based around this expression of will and willingness towards love that is rewarded. So it's the same in repentance. In repentance, the state is, I am willing to feel all of the harm that I have done and to compensate for it personally. God, I'm willing to do that, and I'm very, very sorry about it. And then God can intervene because you already have developed your will so much that you want the loving outcome, even if it means pain for yourself. It's the same for Jesus in the first century. He developed his will so much that he was going to go for that outcome no matter what, even at expense to himself, not out of a sense of lack of self-love, but
or sacrifice.
Or sacrifice, that's the word.
But just a passionate exercise of the desire because it's good and loving and beautiful and
good for everyone.
Brought me, as well as many others, a lot of joy.
Yeah. So that is always rewarded, even if the will of others intervenes and prevents that loving outcome. But if we don't have that initial state of I'm going to do what is loving and I'm passionately going to do it with everything that I have, then the reward is not there because obviously we haven't developed that loving will. But God always rewards the loving will.
Yeah.
And will never reward a denial of will.
Yeah, and never rewards you asking for him to tell you what to do, because that would be a complete denial of your own will. It would be a complete abdication of your own responsibility to make a decision. So this is why whenever people say they get told by God to do something, they weren't told by God to do something. They were told by somebody else. Yeah. And you can frequently tell because many of the things they're told to do are pretty bad. You know? And so you can easily tell that it wasn't God. It was someone else. Somebody who was pretty evil or bad. Yeah. No good spirit either will tell you what to do. It's a way to measure your company, your spirit company. If they're telling you what to do, you're in bad company. Yeah, if they're leading you towards self-destruction, you're in bad company. If they're leading you towards the destruction of others, you're in bad company. Yeah. These are easy, simple ways to tell what kind of influences you're under versus, and also your sincerity to be under those influences or not. You know, it's easy to go along with things suggested when your inclination is in the same direction. So an example of that is a man who wants a relationship sees a woman and goes, oh, I find her sexually attractive, I'm going to try to get him into bed straight away. His inclination is bad. His emotion is terrible towards women. His inclination is bad. Needs to be addressed, right? Now, a man who continually does such things, one after the other women in a row, obviously his inclination is very bad. And he's probably got his own inclination in alignment with a lot of really bad spirit inclination to do such a thing. It's not the kind of thing God recommends a person does. Right? So all these people who say, oh, the whole tantric sex scene, that's in harmony with God. No, it's not. It's not in harmony with God. It's completely out of harmony with God in so many areas because it's against many of God's laws. Right? So, and it's not because of the sex so much as it is because of many other things, power, control, manipulation, and all the other things, spirits involved in it and so forth. There's so many things wrong. And when you are sensitive to God's inclination, you will know what they are, right? So it is easy to tell what is right and wrong, to be honest. Very easy, as long as your inclination is to want to know what is right and wrong. But it's very hard for a person to tell what is right and wrong from God's perspective when their inclination is to do whatever it is they want. Regardless of whether it's right or wrong. Very hard to tell then, because you're going to be, oh, I'm inclined to do that, must be right. I'm inclined to do that, must be right. Oh, I don't want to do that, must be wrong. No. So very easy to tell the difference. The problem we have, many of us, is that we don't understand our inclinations, our desires. We don't grasp how sometimes evil they are. And then on other times, we have good desires, but we're not willing to put the passion into them because we're worried about what people think or what people will do with that, Or we just want to be cool and we just want to look cool while we're doing it.
Or we don't want to try and feel like we failed. We
Yeah.
don't want to feel sad. We don't
Yeah.
want to feel we had a dream and it wasn't fulfilled.
Yeah. So these are all things that your relationship with God will sort you out with. God's the sorter of people. Yeah? Separator.
Thank goodness there's somebody because we need it.
I used to say in the first century, the separator of the sheep and the goats. Yep. He's a sorter of people. He works out those who are inclined, who are inclined towards good. When I say inclined, who want to do good, because you can be wanting to do good without being inclined to do it. Because there's just a difference between the sin you have then and your inclination. You can have a motivation that's beyond your sinful condition. You can be motivated to do good even though in your heart there's a lot of things I do bad and I've got to sort that out. You can still be motivated to do good. And so, there's two parts of you. Also there's your current condition and then there's your inclinations to your future condition. And God knows all that about you. He knows your inclination. He knows whether you're inclined towards further badness or inclined towards goodness. He knows these things about you, and he's trying to sort you out to help you be happier with all of those things. So hopefully in this discussion so far, you've gotten some picture of what God's desires are for you. Right? Got some picture of how God feels about you as an individual, and that he wants to help you. He wants to make your life better, happier. He doesn't want to make it more difficult. He knows that people don't have that inclination. He knows that people around you often do wish to make your life more difficult. People around you often do wish to harm you, right? He knows that. But that's not his intention. His intention is always to help you grow happier, be happier. He's kind and compassionate to your circumstance, but he doesn't tolerate your bad behaviour. He's not going to get an unruly child and say, you're not unruly. He's going to say, yeah, you're pretty unruly. You do bad things. Yeah, you do. He's going to be honest with you about that. And this is the beautiful thing about God, is that he desires to share the truth and his love with you so that your life becomes happier sooner. It's beautiful. He's a beautiful parent. Yeah. Mummy loves you. She cares about you. She wants what is best for you. She cares about your life, your welfare, your future, not just your life here on earth, your future, happiness, welfare, forever for your future. She cares about all that. She wants your desire and love. The one thing she does not have is your love. She doesn't own your love. You do. So she's desirous of receiving your love. Every child who loves her, she feels, and she enjoys the relationship with children who love her. It's beautiful. All right, well, it's time for another break, I think. Time for a relief.
And should we sort of close here and say, if people want to hang around, we'll have some discussion about sort of Well, really, it's for people who'd like to be involved in future planning of events, isn't it?
Not just involved, but who want to understand why we plan events the way we do,
Yep.
and what we're working on in the future, considerations we have. We discuss a little bit about finance as well, so Mary and I want to be open with you about what our finances are, and why we're sort of limited in different ways of doing different things. So the discussion afterwards will turn to a more, what I'd call...
Worldly.
Well,
yeah, I suppose you could say material matters,
Yes, that's
shall we
what it is.
say. But obviously for us, dealing with some material matters is important if we want to share truth with you. We want you to come to a venue where you can sit and not feel a numb bum after an hour or two, where you're able to sit and listen and participate. We like a venue where you're not interrupted by noises outside, and where you can be a bit more absorbed in what's going on. We obviously want to provide venues too where everybody who wants to come can come, because last year we found that there were a lot of people who booked to come and then they didn't come, and they prevented other people from coming. So what we're trying to do in this trip is try to get bigger venues where anybody can come, and if you don't want to come, you don't have to, type of thing. And you don't have to unbook or book, you just come. And this is very helpful in the sense that all the people who are sincere end up coming. And so
It's still loving to cancel your booking.
It's still loving to cancel your booking,
but we didn't have to handle. We got venues large enough that there's no need for any waiting lists. So anyone who wants to come can
come.
Make their plans and come. They don't have to get off a waiting list or whatever.
Yeah.
But we do have other considerations. So if you do book and don't come and don't cancel, that's still quite inconvenient for us, because there are other things that we consider in terms of resources, like we gave the books this time, and there's other things that we think about. So if you could please uphold the loving principle of cancelling your booking if you're not going to come, it does help us. But we're aiming now not to have any more waiting lists, and it's very spacious, this venue. We haven't filled all the seats, but it has been quite comfortable, and it has meant that we haven't had to worry. If lots of people wanted to come at the last minute, then they could all fit in here. Yeah.
So we have some requirements we would like to talk about with you afterwards. Firstly, emotional requirements, some of them, and then other ones of them are more physical requirements. And we'll talk to you about all of those things after we have a break now. But for now, the material we wanted to present to you is presented. It is done. Now, for those of you, we know some of you have got planes to catch and flights to catch and other things to do. So please don't feel bad about leaving now. And those of you who are left over, if we could have you sort of in this section here when we're talking to you, so you're closer to us, that'd be great. And we're just going to talk about some more mundane material matters after the break. And then after we've done with that, which will probably be around the 4:30 mark, we're hoping, or 4:45, somewhere like that, then we really just need our team here who are going to help us pack up. Mary and I need to make sure that all the things that we've got here are dismantled and put in the appropriate boxes and all these other things, and there's a certain method to it. So many of you, I know you want to help us pack up, but you're not going to be able to help us. We need to have the people who know how to help us with these things helping us. And then we hope to see many of you at some point in the future. We're hoping to be back in Europe next year. Sometime, it'll probably be sometime like September-ish next year, so about a year from now. And we hope to see many of you. We're thinking at this stage that it might be Germany, France and Portugal, or it might be just Germany and Portugal at this stage. But we'll be back here in Europe next year, probably just after this time again. Probably more late summer sort of thing rather than early summer. Yeah.
So plan. before we leave, I would just like to thank our helpers. So that's been Nellie, and you can help me, Nellie, with all your helpers. There's been Julie and Tim. Rui, of course, has offered a lot of assistance. Nicholas, also with equipment and so forth.
Yeah.
Pierre helped with the whiteboard. Who else has been a helper? Charlotte. Yvette has done a lot this weekend. Dinner's helped to find the venue initially.
Yeah, so we'd just like to thank all of those
guys
people.
very much.
Now, there's one person we'd like to thank which we haven't thanked, and that is the person actually who paid for our trip. There's one person who paid for this entire trip, and his name's David. He lives in Cyprus, Malta. And we'd like to thank David for giving us the funds to do this trip.
Making this possible.
David?
Yes.
Great. Yeah. All right, so now we'll just have a short break. And,
so if we just
can
be
you make
here
it
at 3:45.
4:45?
Just 10 minutes.
Yes,
If that. Can you pause for a sec, Jay? No, just take a photo.
Okay. Just down.
Oh, yes, that would be nice.